Hello everyone, today is 29th of August, now it's about 8 o'clock in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. And there are quite a few very significant developments and news that I'd like to share with you for this moment, and I will start with short summary of the situation on Ukrainian battlefield. And first of all, Donbass, where Kiev regime's forces basically are running away from a line of contact. Very significant developments, and first of all, I will start with the Grodovka settlement, which is under full Russian control now, according to number of sources, and Russian troops are right now establishing control over the Melikina settlement right next to Grodovka. This is, of course, huge development because Grodovka is a relatively large settlement, and yesterday I reported about Russian units conducting initial stages of offensive on this garrison of Kiev regime in this small town. And later on yesterday, information came in that Russian troops managed to establish full control over the settlement, which is somewhat surprised, even if we take in account relatively rapid advances of Russian forces on Pokrovsk direction. Recently, it seems like Kiev regime's defense lines really are collapsing, and Kiev regime's troops are just running away, no longer willing to fight for Zelensky's regime or the Western geopolitical agenda, and just simply running away. And according to some reports, Grodovka is under full Russian control now. And also Russian troops are basically beginning military operations in Mirgorod settlement, which is located right next to Pokrovsk and is a part of this Pokrovsk agglomeration. And with such a speed of advance, I would not be surprised at all at this point. I mean, there are not going to be no more surprises. If we take in account this rapid advance of the Russian forces, are definitely no longer gonna be surprised if we receive information tomorrow, for example, that half of the Mirgorod is under Russian control, or maybe even entirely this city. Forward units of the Russian armed forces are about 3-4 kilometers away from Pokrovsk city itself. Also, by the way, more information is coming in with the confirmations that Novogrodovka is under full Russian control. Also, by the way, Russian troops are further advancing in Selidovo direction, and yesterday several sources start reporting about withdrawal of Kiev regime's troops from Selidovo, and I expect during the day to receive information that about significant progress of the Russian armed forces in Selidovo direction. Also, maybe in next couple of days, this town will also become under full Russian control, will be liberated. Also, more informations are coming in with the confirmations that Memrik settlement on the southern flank of Pokrovsk sector is under full Russian control. So, as you can see, dear friends, Kiev regime's defense lines are collapsing all along this Pokrovsk sector, and yet again, it seems like Kiev regime's troops are just no longer willing to fight and die for Zelensky's regime and Western geopolitical agenda, because I guess this is first time, at least in 2024, when we are seeing that relatively large settlements, being liberated by Russian forces is just in a couple of days' time. Usually, battles are taking for weeks, in some cases even months. But lately, definitely something has happened, and Kiev regime's defense lines are collapsing. And dear friends, if you remember, I said from very beginning of the Kiev regime's incursion or invasion into Kursk region of the Russian Federation, that this invasion is the beginning of the end of not just Kiev's regime and political career of Zelensky and his criminal associates, but also this is the beginning of the end of Kiev regime's armed forces. as a more or less capable entity, and Ukraine itself as a quasi-state or whatever it is, and observing current developments in Donbass and in Pokrovsk direction, to be more precise. I definitely have more and more indicators to think so, basically. And I guess many members of our community also are now on the same page, that we are observing collapse, beginning of total collapse of the Kyiv regime's armed forces, and things are rapidly developing, not just in Pokrovsk sector. Yesterday, as you know, I reported about Russian progress in Konstantinovka direction, and this settlement is under full Russian control, which came also as a somewhat surprise, because battles for the settlements were continuing for quite a long, this rapid advance of the Russian troops in Konstantinovka was came as a surprise, not just for me, but for very many commentators and channels, and many people, by the way. And right now, most likely, Russian troops, after establishing control over the Konstantinovka and Donetsk sector of the front line, it does make sense to think that Russian troops probably will concentrate now, focused on Vodyana settlement, and of course Ugledar. Already we are receiving reports about activization of the Russian troops in Ugledar direction. So most likely in September we will see significant developments in Ugledar area. And this is not all, by the way. This is definitely not all. Russian troops are about 1 kilometer away from central part of Toretsk. Forward units of the Russian armed forces that are already conducting military operations inside the Toretsk are about 1 kilometer away from central parts of Toretsk. So one should not be surprised, by the way, if Toretsk city will also become under full Russian control, also will be liberated by Russian troops from occupying regime, Western occupying regime, in about a week's time, maybe even, because yet again, advances of the Russian armed forces are really rapid. And when it comes to Kursk salient, well, Russian armed forces sealed basically this salient, despite attempts of Kyiv regime's forces to conduct this mobile warfare and with active deployment of armored groups. They are no longer are capable to achieve anything, really. This salient is sealed, and on daily basis we are receiving more and more video confirmations of destruction of these armored groups of Kyiv regime. Eventually, I'm quite sure Kyiv regime's troops and NATO instructors and the mercenaries in Kursk salient will no longer even attempt to do this mobile warfare, to move around on armored groups. Probably they will try to dig in and take and hide basically, because operational control is under absolute Russian control over this area. And if anybody has had any doubts that this invasion was a fatal mistake on part of Kyiv regime, then I don't think at this point there are many people that still don't understand that. This is definitely a fatal mistake on part of Kyiv regime, and Kursk salient is a 100% trap for Kyiv regime's brigades. And I remind you, dear friends, that according to Russian Defense Ministry, Kyiv regime already lost about 7,000 military personnel during this invasion of the Kursk region, and hundreds of military equipment, up to 700 different type of military equipment, if not more. So very important developments, especially of course in Toretsk and Pokrovsk directions. Well, I guess in upcoming days we will see more and more indicators of the collapse of Kyiv regime's armed forces on these directions. That's been said, let's continue with some other news now. And first of all, I'll give you this news, and many members of our community already informed about it, I'm quite sure. RIA Novosti and many other media outlets in Russia reported that Pavel Durov, CEO of the Telegram, was released on bail of 5 million euro. And well, he is not allowed to leave France. Investigation still continues. He will be under police observation. Although, by the way, several public figures and even politicians in France are calling Durov to somehow flee France if he wants to be safe, which is quite an indicator, isn't it, about state in which modern France really is. But at least for now, Durov is free. And probably today we will receive some statements from him, maybe. Let's see. Also, by the way, RIA Novosti is reporting that number of Ukrainian Telegram channels reported about explosions in the Kyiv and surrounding areas, Kyiv region. Basically, no specifics about these explosions, although yesterday late evening and at night time there was reports that Russia launched some 30 to 50 Gerain drones towards the military and logistics infrastructure of the Kyiv regime, and maybe these explosions are connected with these Gerain drone strikes. That's a possibility, but yet again, no precise information for now. TASS news agency is reporting that Akhmat special forces neutralized foreign mercenaries in Kursk region, and among these neutralized mercenaries are citizens of Poland and Germany. Yet again, no specifics were given, but this information comes from I believe Akhmat special forces. And well, they definitely know with whom they are fighting, isn't it? They are listening to radio communication of their enemy, and they were hearing Polish and the German language. So probably, I mean, we can say mercenaries, but in reality, most likely Polish and the German soldiers. Military personnel was neutralized in the Kursk region during one of the battles, basically. And possibly during the day we will receive some additional information on that. Vzglyad newspaper is also reporting that Kyiv regime lost a pilot who was training in US to fly F-16s, and this information can be seen and are seen by number of media outlets as an indirect confirmation that Kyiv regime's F-16s, formerly Kyiv regime's F-16s, being destroyed during the recent Russian large-scale missile and drone strikes on military and logistics infrastructure of the Kyiv regime. And deputy of the Lutsk city council, Igor Palitsuk, basically confirmed information that pilot of 204th Brigade of Tactical Aviation of the Kyiv regime, Alexei Mesyan, was killed. No indicators that he was shot down on a plane. So therefore, most likely, during the Russian strikes on airfields of the Kyiv regime, this pilot was neutralized, and most likely F-16 planes. Also, for example, Lenta.ru is publishing information that it became known that Ukrainian armed forces lost its first F-16 US-made fighter jet, and this happened according to Lenta.ru's sources. And Lenta.ru's source is a short Telegram channel, by the way. So according to this short Telegram channel and Lenta.ru, F-16 of the Kyiv regime, formerly Kyiv regime, was destroyed in in Khmelnytsky region in Starokonstantinov airfield as a result of Russian strikes. It is a possibility, undoubtedly, but yet again, of course, it's difficult to take at this point any information for face value without photo and video confirmations, because there is a media warfare also, or information warfare, isn't it? And therefore we should take any information with a pinch of salt, obviously. But yet again, if pilot was killed, and this was reported by Kyiv regime, pilot that was undergoing training for F-16s in US, then well, it does make sense to think that during that strike some military equipments also were destroyed on the airfield, including F-16s. Let's continue. RT is reporting that Ukrainian draft office is threatens now with a lethal force citizens of the Ukraine. So draft officers are within the right to use lethal force in self-defense against citizens in Ukrainian Regional Enlistment Authority warned on Tuesday. The head of draft office in the western Ukrainian region of Volyn stated that their office had already been instructed to use lethal force in situations requiring self-defense. All personnel of all draft offices have been notified that in the event of the threat to life, lethal force should be used. The jokes are over. You wanted it to go by law. Everything will go according to law, their office has said in a statement. The threat came following an attack on an enlistment office in the city of Lutsk earlier the same day. The facility was targeted by unknown assailant who engaged in a gunfight with their soldiers guarding it. According to local authorities, during their skirmish, one of their servicemen received gunshot wounds while the attacker escaped the scene and remains at large. These so-called officers of the enlistment offices of the Zelensky's regime are getting what they deserve. They are kidnapping people on the streets. They are hated, by the way, all along the Kyiv-controlled territory. They are seen as a policies of during the Second World War, when number of Ukrainian Nazis were collaborating with Nazi Germany, and people are hating these enlistment officers and are quite often taking actions. They've been beaten up a number of times. Several of them were killed, and this process will only continue. And I'm quite sure after this conflict will end, by the way, these enlistment officers will find it extremely difficult to be safe in Ukraine because of this hate that they generate in the population. Everybody hates them. So most likely, once Kyiv regime will collapse and once Zelensky and other criminals will flee, these enlistment officers will also run away like rats in a first wave. Just mark my word, by the way. RT is also reporting that this drug addict Zelensky, during the recent press conference, shared his fantasies with so-called journalists in Ukraine, and he said that Kyiv has tested the first ballistic missile. So Ukraine has test-fired its first domestically produced ballistic missile. Vladimir Zelensky has stated Kyiv has been asking its Western backers for a month to allow it to use foreign-made missile systems to hit targets deep inside Russia. Ukrainian leader made an announcement at a press conference and said, what other developments are there in Ukraine? I thought it was too early to talk about it, but there was a positive test of the first Ukrainian ballistic missile. I congratulate our military production complex on this, he stated, and he's lying, by the way, basically. That's what it is. He is lying, and these statements may be seen as yet another attempt of the Western ruling class to maintain plausible deniability. They are creating now a gender, this narrative that Kyiv regime is in a place to build long-range weapon systems, and therefore all these long-range strikes deep inside Russian territory done by Kyiv regime with domestically built weapon systems and has nothing to do with the West. That's the narrative that they are working on. Although, by the way, who's gonna buy this? I mean, really, who gonna buy this? I'm talking about rest of the world outside of collective West, because I understand perfectly well that in collective West countries, vast majority of the public are under heavy influence of the propaganda, and they will believe anything, absolutely anything. If I don't know, if propaganda will tell them through TV or newspapers or some that Biden is a angel that was sent to the earth by God himself, well, give it a week or 2 or 3 of this heavy propaganda, of that craziness, that nonsense, and unfortunately vast majority of people in the West probably will believe that Biden is a angel. I mean, that's how bad situation is in the West when it comes to access to real news, real information. Propaganda runs things out there. Anyways, let's continue. RT is reporting that West wants to send expensive Ukrainians back. This is also Zelensky's statements, by the way. So Vladimir Zelensky has claimed that some European countries hosting Ukrainian refugees want to send them home to fight, and have brought this up with him privately. Speaking at the Ukraine 2024 Independence Forum in Kiev, Zelensky was asked about a recent Bloomberg report that several EU countries have rejected Kiev's demands to return men of fighting age. According to Zelensky, some Western leaders approached him privately about sending Ukrainians back because it's very expensive to support refugees who are nothing but a burden on the host countries. Saying so publicly would be politically disadvantageous for them, claimed Zelensky. And well, in this particular case, well, we don't really need statements from Zelensky to understand that number of EU member states are increasing pressure on Ukrainian refugees. This is true, and I reported about it number of times, and more often officials in the EU member states are proposing different initiatives how to arrange basically deportations of their Ukrainian refugees into their homeland, especially military age men. Of course, then they're going to call it deportation. They will come up with some right wording for that, so that public will buy into it. But yes, I mean, from Germany to Ireland, by the way, almost all EU member, Western European EU member states are considering sending back Ukrainian refugees. Some work is done on this direction, and even in Central and Eastern Europe, by the way, Poland is actively engaged in this proxy war against Russia, and even though Polish economy is benefiting significantly by employing Ukrainian citizens of Ukraine as a cheap labor, but because of the ideology of the Polish political elites, and they are, by the way, xenophobes, like I mean, they are complete Russophones and xenophobes, and they will sign up for anything to harm Russia. So therefore, and of course, they want to establish control of the Western Ukraine, parts of Western Ukraine that used to be part of Poland before Second World War. So they want Ukraine to be decimated, absolutely. So that once they will reclaim former territories, they will receive no significant opposition there. So Poland also may send back Ukrainian refugees, deport Ukrainian refugees. RT is reporting that well, CIA admits conversations over the Ukraine's incursion into Russia. So Ukraine's ongoing cross-border incursion into Russia's Kursk region will likely continue for some period of time, Deputy CIA Director David Cohen told the Intelligence and the National Security Summit on Wednesday. Speaking on this conference, Cohen on this summit, Cohen stated he first of all declined to answer a direct question about whether he and his colleagues at Langley were just as surprised by Ukraine's incursion, noting that the significance and the implications of the attack remain to be seen. So basically, by refusing to give a direct answer, it is becoming obvious that, of course, CIA was in talks and engaged with the Kyiv regime in the planning of this Kursk invasion. But no doubts about that, by the way. Not just CIA, but White House and, of course, Pentagon. And then we have a quote here. They are remaining in Russia, those invading forces, building defenses, and as best as we can tell from our conversations, there seems to be intent on retaining some of that territory for some period of time, Cohen stated, without elaborating on what those conversations entailed. Cohen went to assert that Ukraine's attack has the potential to change the dynamic of the conflict going forward, but he admitted there is no doubt that Russia will mount a counteroffensive to try and reclaim that territory. Well, first of all, one may say that this Kursk invasion of the Kyiv regime and NATO already changed the dynamic, and definitely not in favor of the Kyiv regime or the collective West, isn't it, or Western ruling class. Since this invasion, Russian forces are basically advancing with unprecedented pace in Pokrovsk and New York Donetsk directions, right? It is just factual. So yes, there is a change in dynamics, and Russian troops are advancing on daily basis on very significant scale. And at this point, probably we should not surprise at all if in a week or 2 weeks' time, Pokrovsk itself and the Donetsk also, by the way, will be liberated by Russian forces from this Western occupying regime, right? So in that sense, ironically, of course, Cohen, the CIA criminal, meant different stuff, but I mean, ironically, his words have, are true, although definitely not in favor of the Kyiv regime and the West. Dynamic has changed in Russian favor big time. And as I said, by the way, this Kursk invasion was and is beginning of the end of Kyiv regime, Zelensky and his associates, their political career. And also, this is the beginning of the end of Kyiv regime's armed forces as a more or less capable entity, and Ukraine itself as a quasi-state. I mean, that's how I see from very first day of this invasion, the situation. And I guess if initially some people might disagree with me, now probably many people will agree with me. RIA Novosti is reporting that, Russia prohibit to enter Russia some 92 citizens of US. Some of them are so-called journalists, propagandists of the Western ruling class, and others are connected with some security forces in security institutions or state institutions in US. Okay, interesting step. And this is always usually this is always retaliatory steps from the Russian side. TASS news agency is also reporting that according to reports from EU, there is a not misunderstanding, but there is a disagreement among some EU member states about further deliveries of their weapons and munition to Kyiv regime. And also there is disagreement about sending instructors to Ukraine from the EU, and therefore on a meeting of EU foreign ministers that will take place on 29th, 30th of August, today, tomorrow, most likely these topics or there will be no decisive actions or decisions made on these topics, especially on the topic of sending instructors from the EU member states militaries. Well, okay, NATO is through NATO, EU member states militaries already are participating directly in hostilities against Russia. So if EU as a quasi organization or state will try to maintain some a distance from this conflict, okay, but I mean, this is cannot be seen serious. By the way, EU, NATO are involved in this conflict, in this proxy war against Russia, so much so that all these statements from Brussels or other capitals don't really make any sense at this point. They may come up today or tomorrow and say, these foreign ministers of the EU member states, that we had the talks and we decide to not to send right now our instructors. And very same time, by the way, instructors, so-called instructors or mercenaries from very same countries already are in Ukraine and are fighting and dying on behalf of Kiev regime and Western geopolitical agenda. So what is this all stupid games all about, man? Really, I mean, they're already full majority of the people in the West, right? And the rest of the world gives no damn about propaganda of the West. So to whom they are conducting these clown shows, really? I don't know. RT is reporting that IT failure in the NATO countries military causes nationwide outage. Interesting. Network failure at the Dutch Defense Ministry has caused cascading computer problems across the Netherlands, shutting down Eindhoven airport and even disrupting police communication. The unspecified problem was first detected on Tuesday evening on a military network. The Dutch National Cybersecurity Center could not say whether the outage was caused by cyber attack. We are experiencing an outage in one of our networks at the Defense Department, and it is a network that is also used by other parts of the Dutch government. Lawrence Bos, Defense Ministry spokesperson, told AP on Wednesday. Same time, the NCSC noted that it could not send out security alerts due to a problem with the data center. Okay, interesting. Who knows? Maybe this was a hacker attack. It's a possibility, isn't it? But yet again, Netherlands are not yet sharing information, precise information on that. Interesting. And I remind dear friends that Netherlands, for example, also are actively engaged in hostility against Russia. And Netherlands, I believe, is the first country who sent its F-16s, for example, to Kiev regime. Right? Netherlands and Denmark, they were very fast to act against Russia. I wonder why, man. Why Denmark? Why Netherlands? I mean, I don't know. Maybe because they are client states and they will do whatever Washington and London will tell them to do. Maybe that's the case. But anyways, and of course Russophobes. By the way, these Russophobes in Western elites, it's a kind of tradition of the Western political class, isn't it, to be Russophobe and to be xenophobe and Nazi and racist and all kind of negative stuff. So Anyways, let's continue. And well, before I share some additional news, let me notice, dear friends, if I may, that this small media project of mine with several channels on YouTube, Rumble, Telegram is completely subscriber funded and fully independent, by the way. It's thanks to you that I'm able to continue to work on this programs on this project. And well, if you find my work interesting, useful, if you think my channels deserve to exist in this field of news and political commentary, please consider to support with donations or by subscribing to my Boosty channel, by the way, which is here. I mean, you can donate through PayPal, you can donate through Boosty, or you can subscribe to my Boosty channel, and I have some bonus videos here as my thank for support. And I also have, of course, significantly more extra content on my Patreon page, which is I mean, I start working on Patreon much earlier than on Boosty, so therefore obviously Patreon is much more developed, although nowadays I'm publishing same video on both platforms. So yes, all the links, by the way, to my PayPal, Boosty, Patreon are under this video in description box and in the pinned comment. And dear friends, I just mentioned Rumble, and let me remind you, if I may, that my channel is not monetized on YouTube, and it will be helpful if you will watch or listen my videos on Rumble, on my Rumble channel, because channel is monetized there. Who knows if one day my videos will reach, my channel will grow and my videos will have like 10-15,000 views. In that case, of course, Rumble may become significant source of financial support for this project. So if you can, please watch my videos on Rumble, or just watch it on YouTube if you want to, but you can open Rumble also and just make sound, just turn off the sound and it will count for a view anyways. Yeah, so that being said, let's continue with some more news, dear friends. RT is reporting that African state blocks a ship allegedly carrying weapons to Israel. Interesting news, isn't it? So Namibia has blocked a vessel suspected of carrying explosive materials bound for Israel from docking in the Southern African nation's ports. The state-run newspaper New Era reported on Tuesday. Their MV Catherine requested the permission on Friday to stop at the port of Wolves Bay. Namibian Justice Minister Yone Dosab told the outlet. She said it was unclear where their ship had sailed from, but the BBC claimed it had departed Vietnam and was supposed to dock in Namibia before sailing north on the suspect route to Mediterranean via the Strait of Gibraltar. Upon receiving reports that the vessel may be carrying weapons intended for Israel, I requested the relevant authorities not to allow the vessel MV Catherine to dock at the Wolves Bay port, the minister said. So, well, Israel, due to actions of the Netanyahu and his government, are losing, by the way, losing big time when it comes to worldwide support. And I guess Israeli public and even Netanyahu's government is beginning to realize that I mean, to be this, you know, that world is definitely not in favor of all that devastating actions that Netanyahu's government committed against Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip and also in the West Bank. By the way, many people are forgetting that West Bank is also occupied, and on daily basis Palestinians being killed there in the West Bank for no reason, just because they are born there and live there all their lives. And there are so many extremely graphic, disturbing videos about actions of the criminal actions of the IDF in Gaza Strip, in the West Bank. That, I mean, it's a hell on earth. It's a hell on earth, and I really hope Netanyahu and his criminal associates will end up in a court and will pay a heavy price for all the crimes that they committed against humanity, man. It's you know. And let's be clear, dear friends, it's a shame of humanity, really, whole of humanity, that we were unable to stop this massacre of the civilians in Palestine. We were unable to stop Netanyahu and his criminal associates. It's shame on humanity, and I mean, history will remember these times definitely as such, that humanity was so out of touch with reality, or so ununited, so divided, that that people were unable to stop genocide, stop massacre of the civilians, which is shame, though. And we call ourselves civilization, right? Oh, we are so civilized, man, so civilized. Tens of thousands of children being killed in Palestine, and all we see is statements from officials all around, isn't it? And very few countries are taking any actions to somehow end that conflict and this massacre of the people, man. And by the way, saying so, there is no way I'm in support of Hamas or any other armored group in Palestine. You know what Hamas did on October 7 was a crime, 100%, when it comes to attacks on civilians. But one horrible action never justifies another horrible action, right? It is what it is, man. Interfax is reporting, and one should keep in mind, by the way, that Palestinians are occupied, right? And they have a right. We always hear that Israel has a right for self-defense. And what about Palestinians? They are occupied, right? Not Israel is occupied by Palestinians. It's exactly the opposite. So, do Palestinians have a right to resist occupation? Of course they do, right? And that's why I'm saying on October 7, attacks of Palestinian armored groups against civilians, that was a crime, undoubtedly. But attacks on Israeli military forces, that was a legit action. Because military forces of Israel definitely are legit targets for resistance movement. I mean, it is what it is, right? Because they are occupying force. For decades now, by the way. For decades. Some may argue that it was, I don't know, 2005 or whatever year when Israel formally left Gaza Strip by maintaining its occupation force in the West Bank. But after withdrawing formally from Gaza Strip, they turned entire this territory into open-air prison. So did occupation really end on that? Anyways, let's continue, by the way, and we can only hope that this horrible stuff will end in Palestine, man. I have no words, man. It's crazy what's happening, and it is crazy that humanity is in such a weak. Humanity is such a weak that it cannot stop this craziness of the Netanyahu and his government and their backers in the Western ruling class, right? Anyways, let's continue. And Interfax is reporting that Georgian government is considering to make Orthodox Christianity Orthodoxy as a state religion in the country. And press spokesman of the Georgia's Orthodox Church, Andrea Jagmaidze, confirmed these talks between church and ruling party or government, which is interesting, by the way. Which is interesting. Georgia is one of the first countries in this world that become Christian. It was 337th year, 4th century, basically, when Georgia was Christianized. Kingdoms, by the way, that were Georgian kingdoms that were located on territory of modern Georgia, of course, because and it does make sense, by the way. In my understanding, Christianity play, of course, huge role, Orthodox Christianity, to maintain Georgian identity, Georgian culture. Christianity play a huge historical role in Georgia, in Georgia society, and therefore, in my personal opinion, it does make sense to basically highlight importance of Orthodox Christianity for Georgia and Georgian public, and to make it a state religion. Nothing wrong with that. So let's see, by the way, although if this will be done, I'm quite sure Western ruling class gonna go crazy over that. Also because, Western ruling elites, they hate everything traditional, everything about history and culture. I mean, they hate literally everything and everybody that are connected with traditions and dignity and values, by the way, real human values. The interesting news. Let's see if Georgian government will go ahead with that decision. Also, RIA Novosti is reporting that Putin, president of Russian Federation, had a phone conversation with the president of Azerbaijan, Aliyev, and one of the topics of discussion was a peace treaty between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Recently, of course, we all know that Russian president visited Azerbaijan. There was talks there, including about de-escalation between Azerbaijan and Armenia. After that, Russian president had a phone call with Pashinyan, prime minister of Armenia, and I guess this conversation now between Azerbaijani and Russian presidents, during this conversation, Russian president shared their information that possibly Pashinyan wanted to be delivered to Azerbaijani side, so Putin played a mediator's role, as Russia always does, by the way, and always was trying to play a role of mediator to not allow full-scale war to erupt between the two countries that are in very difficult relationships, Azerbaijan and Armenia. And it will be good, by the way, for Southern Caucasus region, for countries around. Of course, if Baku and Yerevan will sign a peace treaty, but I'm a bit skeptical of that. Western ruling class is actively engaged in a destabilizing situation in the Southern Caucasus region, in Georgia, in Armenia. Western ruling class is actively, basically, engaged in anti-Azerbaijani activity also. After all, France and France is leading this charge against Azerbaijan, and the relationships between Paris and Baku are extremely bad. So and for this and many other reasons, by the way, I'm a bit skeptical that we will see some true de-escalation in the Southern Caucasus region. But it is good that at least Moscow is trying to play a positive role, to bring conflicting sides closer to each other and to achieve the escalation. So it's good steps from Russian side, but yet again, Russia cannot do everything, isn't it? Vzгляд newspaper is reporting that former Russian president and current deputy chairman of the Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, spoke about migration processes and said that migrants into Russia have to respect Russian traditions, have to respect Russian history, and basically have to live obeying Russian law and the rules that are in Russian society. Rules about what is good and what is not, what is appropriate and what is not, isn't it? You cannot make a law about everything, right? You cannot make law about some elemental behavior, how you should behave on, I don't know, on the streets or something. So there are enough laws, but also there are rules, isn't it? In every society, everywhere, including in Russia, what is appropriate and what is not. And unfortunately, there are instances when these migrants, work migrants, basically, we are talking about, some of them are acting irresponsibly and basically are jeopardizing their fellow citizens' abilities to stay and work in Russia due to their inadequate behavior. And society here in Russia is getting a bit tired of that, and therefore some decisions being made and most likely will be made to make sure that this migration processes, which is in general unstoppable, but definitely some decisions have to be made to make sure that people that are entering Russia will not cause any disturbances, right? And Medvedev, by the way, while making these statements, also mentioned Western experience, and he said that Western world went a different way, and we'll see now how much divisions in societies this topic of migration is creating, and Russia has to take in account Western experience and act more safely, if that's the right word, not to allow anything and anybody to put some cracks in the social fabric. Important statements in my opinion, because definitely migration is an issue that is relevant in society, and I mean, there is some simple steps that can be put in place. For example, if you have to know Russian language, for example, at least on certain level, and not just like 2 words, "Здравствуй, до свидания." No, you should know Russian on basic level, at least. You should know Russian constitution. Basics. I'm not talking about entire constitution, by the way. I'm not talking about do you have to be constitutionalist to enter Russia, but you have to know basics about Russia. What kind of country is Russia, right? You have to know some basics about country that you are entering for whatever reason, for work or you know, for whatever. And of course, you have to be good resident of Russia, obviously. And then some steps will be taken. Obviously, by the way, I'm 100% convinced. I'm one may say first generation migrant, right? I was born in Soviet Union, in Georgian Soviet Socialist Republic, and due to certain circumstances that are connected with my journalistic work in Georgia, eventually I end up in Russia, and I received Russian citizenship a few years ago, and me and my family, by the way, we are good citizens of Russia, and we will do whatever it takes to be good citizens, because that's the right way. We know Russian, we are integrated in a society, which is also right approach, and you know, we raise kids with their understanding that they have to love their country, their people, and be good citizens. That's the way that everybody should operate, in my opinion, because this country gives you opportunity to live here. This society received you, right? And at least what you can do is be a good citizen and good member of their society, right? Anyways, let's continue. And Interfax is reporting that Russian government completely closed the release of information about production of oil products in Russia. I don't know what this information is connected to, why this decision was made there. Maybe to create additional problems for the Western ruling class to have an understanding how much oil products Russia is selling and to whom, and you know, that kind of stuff. Although eventually, probably this is not I don't think this is a classified information, so therefore probably Western ruling class will manage to learn about it anyways. Yes, that's the information that we are getting. Also, by the way, interesting news that nuclear weapons is proposed as a savior of the Earth. So nuclear weapons may be their best means of protection, to protecting their Earth from their asteroids, according to scientists from China's deep space exploration program. In a paper published on this month in the Chinese journals Scientia Sinica Technologica, their team of researchers warned that despite recent developments in the near-Earth object detection technologies, inaccuracies can occur, which means humanity needs to be prepared to fend off space debris. In their study, the researchers analyzed the variety of their defense methods and their feasibility in protecting the planet from asteroids from different sizes, densities, and warning periods. Their findings suggest that short notice, for example 1 week until impact, nuclear warheads would be the only thing capable of altering their asteroid course to avoid the collision. Based on their analysis, the team suggested that the best solution to counter potential threats posed by asteroids would be to develop a global nuclear-based defense system. And also, by the way, I mean, I can understand logic behind this research. If it's a short notice warning, like 1 week, then most likely all the other technologies that are in discussion, for example, some are suggesting that lasers can be used to hit a surface of the asteroid, which will force it to move. And in space, if you move just for degree some object, it will be enough to significantly alter its course over the long distances. But if it's just 1 week notice, that means that asteroid is approaching Earth already, and in that case, probably yes, nuclear weapons can be the only option to at least fragmentize asteroid. And those fragments, probably some of them will still hit the Earth and will cause some damage, but at least impact would not be as colossal as if a huge asteroid is targeting Earth intact, right? But there is issues with this solution. The researchers said they were aware of their idea is challenging for a number of reasons. Firstly, no nation currently has the ability to launch nuclear warheads into deep space, which means that the new launch vehicles would have to be developed. Secondary, China, along with most of the nuclear states on the planet, is a part of 1967 Outer Space Treaty and the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which prohibits signatures from stationing weapons of mass destruction in space. Thirdly, nuclear explosions cause radioactive pollution even in space, which poses a threat of secondary harm to Earth and other celestial bodies in its proximity. So yes, there are some obstacles, some issues to be overcome if this idea is ever implemented. Creation of this nuclear defense force of the planet. And I will add, by the way, to these several points that scientists mention, I will add that humanity is divided, by the way. Who's gonna be in charge of that nuclear defense system of the Earth when no nuclear countries are trusting each other, right? And not just not trusting each other, but US and the UK and France, by the way, three nuclear powers, are actively engaged in proxy war against Russia, country that has most nuclear warheads. So therefore, I think there is a much bigger obstacle to achieve this goal, which is political divide of the political elites of this world. Anyways, let's continue. And RIA Novosti is reporting that US shared information with China and Russia about debris in space that may be harmful for Russian and Chinese satellites. Interesting, by the way, this was stated by head of Space Command of US Space Forces or whatever, Stephen Whiting, and he was somewhat criticized why you are sharing information with Chinese and Russians, and he said that this is the fields that we should cooperate, and it is good, by the way. It is good that at least there are some people in the collective West countries that understand that with the constant hostilities, world will not get anywhere, and cooperation is needed. And it's good, by the way. It's good. I'm quite sure if Russia and Chinese scientists have information that a certain object is causing threat to US satellite, they will inform their US colleagues or European colleagues, by the way. And yes, at least in space we should cooperate, for God's sake, man. But yet again, it's not up to us, isn't it? If it was up to us, ordinary people, there would be no wars on this planet. But decisions are made by some groups that don't really care about us, right, and our opinion, especially in the collective West, by the way, because Western ruling class, in my opinion, is existential threat for humanity, and obviously they don't care about us at all. They just don't. Quite a long update, dear friends, quite a long update, but hopefully you will find it informative and interesting, and if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything. Any topic will do. This is the only way we can influence our algorithm, as you know, to reach wider audience, and for very same reason, please, if you can share information about my channels in a real life with your friends or on internet, on any of the platforms that you are actively using. And yes, I guess that's it. If you like my work, if you want to support, you can do it. All the links, by the way, are under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a great day and take care.